Hi, it's Zev Halpern. Thanks for joining us today for the Stimulate Your Relationship show, where nothing is taboo and nothing is off limits. We have a great show tonight focusing on helping people cope with the many negative aspects of relationship breakup and divorce. On this show, we usually deal with enhancing and improving relationships, but not every relationship works out, as the statistics bear that out. And there comes a time when one or both reaches that point to call it quits. When relationships or marriages end, there's hurt, anger, loneliness, resentment, and hostility. For some, there's great relief and a feeling of freedom from a volatile situation. These consequences of breakup, separation, and divorce give rise to a period of rebuilding and adjusting many facets of life, including economics, confidence, and for many, the courage to meet new people and pick up the pieces of a familiar bond no longer active. As the cycle of relationships continue, many new relationships form, involving two people, some wounded emotionally and physically, coming from previous relationship breakups and divorce. The success of their relationship bond will depend greatly on how much they were willing to look at their own dynamics, what worked and what didn't in their previous relationship. Parents and other relationship role models, communication, conflict resolution, needs and priorities, and approach to life together, including intimacy. Take a look at this, and we'll be right back to introduce you to tonight's guests. Tonight, we have two guests who will help us gain huge perspective about the impact of relationship breakup and divorce and how you can find better ways to cope. One guest, Debbie Bluestein, is with us in the studio, while the second, Dr. John Schinner, is on a Zoom recording from my office in Maryland to his in California. I'm confident both will provide a wealth of information on this difficult topic when relationships end. Debbie Bluestein is a mother of two young adult sons who live with her and has been divorced for 5.5 years. Debbie has been in a healthy and happy relationship for 8 months. She's an entrepreneur, business owner, and now an operations manager. She enjoys helping others as much as she can, those friends that are either going through a challenging life experience or a challenging business issue. Her friends know they can count on Debbie's honest and thoughtful advice. Those in her community can count on her generosity and ability to help when asked of her. Debbie has strongly persevered through a difficult divorce and has much to give others to help them navigate the storm of a broken relationship and the negative trickle-down effect it can have on children, family, and social circles. Debbie Bluestein, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
And it's so nice to see you. You had a great deal to deal with us being here from the get-go. I didn't even know how many years ago it was.
6, 7?
It got to be something.
Something
Like that. So just from the get-go, the decision to divorce, procrastination.
Very much.
How does all that go?
Well, the old stereotype of stay together for the children, horrible decision.
Stay together for the children.
Well, that's what I kept being told. And what's fascinating is my now 18-year-old said to me when I first left, well, about a year after we left, he said, "What took you so long? Why didn't you do it earlier? It would have been really nice had you done it when I was in elementary school and preschool." And I had my heart ripped out. I felt horrible about that. And I said, better late than never.
And life is
Right,
life
better-
doesn't go according to the way we plan.
Exactly. But at the same time, we've learned how to move forward from that point.
So what about, feeling about your decision? Feeling good, feeling, weird after it happened? I mean, what was up with you?
Shock. More of the situation that I was in was very challenging, and I didn't necessarily want it to end the way it did, but it did. And I'm actually thankful for it at this point, in retrospect.
So you're saying that you held, pretty tenaciously to this
I did.
advice that people were giving
I
you,
did.
and the whole
Yeah.
idea of it's not a good thing,
It's
even
right.
though even though it probably would have been a better thing.
Well,
to go-
it's yes, and it was a stability, an invisible stability that I thought was there just by the word marriage, and I was mom and dad for the kids.
and fortress and
Everything.
everything.
Right. I was the breadwinner. I was, the one that cooked dinner, the one that cleaned the house, the whole 9 yards.
So talk a little bit about what's it like, to be alone at a weak point. You had your kids, which is wonderful, but to be alone, to realize, what, I got to do this.
Yep.
I got to move forward.
Yep.
I can't go back.
Correct.
I made a decision. I got to go. What's that like? The aloneness, which many people feel after.
I actually did a lot of introspection and said, if I'm going to make it through this, I need to make me a better person. And so for any anger or loneliness or sadness, I just looked inside of me and said, there has to be a better way. And I pulled it out of me. And I was listening to motivational speeches, and I surrounded myself with positive motivational quotes 100% of the time. My kids always teased me about all my wall, but I have an entire wall of positive motivational quotes that spoke to me.
So basically, you used affirmations.
100%.
And that helped you because
It was,
you can sink deep.
and actually, I tell my friends that are going through rough times, you're going to sink deep, and if you think you've hit bottom, you haven't yet. And then you keep going, and it gets darker and darker and darker until you see a little teeny light in the top corner, and run.
Did you ever just say, I just want to be with somebody? I want to find, or were you quite the opposite? I think I'll be alone for a while, even though this is not, the happiest moment in times of my life.
It was more of I felt like I need to fix me before I can be there for somebody else. And I need to be able to feel comfortable with who I am or who I've become, which I was not at the time. And when I was going through all that, I wanted to be alone.
Many people's needs creep ahead of their sense.
Right. And I couldn't let that happen.
It's like, you want to be with somebody, you've just
Yeah.
been through hell, you've been through whatever, and you still want to be with somebody, or you still want to,
No question.
not be alone, and how, what it's like to have somebody to lean on, and all that. However, the decision to look at yourself, to take a look inside, to before you go ahead and move ahead and see why is it that I got into that in the first place?
Well, that was the whole thing. Is I
How
kept
did that
saying,
happen?
Right, because it's not what I signed up for.
No, I don't think so.
But what I said is I can't, unless I'm a whole person again, I can't be in a serious relationship with anybody. I need to bring all of me there, not a broken portion.
So the coping mechanisms that helped you were affirmations. Anything else? What about with the kids and stuff? I mean,
They it was very helpful just to talk to them. I have an amazing relationship with the kids now. They tell me everything under the sun, and their friends do too, and they all say I'm the coolest mom around.
Well, perhaps you were consistent with
Very
them.
right, yeah.
I mean, and that's a big deal.
And I was always there for them.
In breakup is this whole issue of which parent is going to be consistent. And kids respond to that consistency. Even though they might fight it, they might scream and yell and all that, consistency bears out. You know, it
Right.
wins in the end. It's about consistency.
And also just listening and being present and not thinking about, oh no, you know, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. It's ridiculous. You need to listen to what the kids need and hear what they're saying and not badmouth the other spouse at all. That's the worst.
Which happens.
All the time.
That's a very frequent thing
My
because,
ex,
you know,
my ex still does. But it's...
that's a human shortcoming, you know, that
Well,
seems
it
to
is.
repeat itself.
Of course
you
it
know,
is,
in
but
many relationships.
But it's not fair to the kids. It's because a lot of kids will internalize that and say, well, I'm half of that individual as well. Therefore, you're looking at me like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, and you're talking bad about me.
Exactly.
Part of me.
Right. Yes.
Whatever,
Right.
you know, however it is or was, it's still, they don't think of it as you do. They don't see it through the same eyes.
Right.
You know, you're looking at it in a much bigger
Yeah.
frame.
Right.
frame
So
than they are.
that's what I did. Was I have two sons, as you said, as I said. But so what I did was I always put strong male mentor role models in front of them, as much as I could, and I focused on them and their health and future, and kind of put me backward in the background at first.
That's got to be hard. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
got to be hard.
It is. It is. But
You have to know your priorities. Some people don't.
Right.
Seems that you did.
Well, I needed to
You love your
focus on them.
children.
I do. And I needed to focus on them. And then as they grew older, I realized they didn't need me as much in that same capacity. And I said, all right, it's time to work on me. And realizing that they're almost out of the house and I don't want to be alone the rest of my life.
So let's turn to up from divorce.
Sure.
You know, what was that like? All of us, you know, it didn't all of a sudden just one day you just went, I'm up from divorce.
Oh,
you know,
no, not at all.
How's that work?
I kept calling myself the queen of first dates. And I can't tell you how many first dates I went on. And it
Wasn't the
was
dream
not-
date.
No, kind of no. There was a handful that I wanted to say, you know, why did we even take the time to go next?
What are some of those dating up and downs? I mean, just so that, because there are people out there who are experiencing what you experienced, going to, and have. What's a
Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And don't be afraid to second guess yourself, because if you have a gut feeling about somebody, run with it, because there's something there that you need to be hesitant of. I've had a lot of married men approach me, and
they sense the vulnerability, and you know
Sure.
and they
right, exactly.
zero
Magnet.
in.
Magnet.
There's a vulnerable one.
Exactly. And the other part to that is some that are separated
Yes.
and
Not sure where their foot is. Their foot in,
and
one
it could
foot out.
be right, and it could be a few years that they're separated. It's exactly make a decision.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, they're not, because they're obviously, you know, they're
Right,
kind of like playing
right,
the
exactly. You
pond.
can't- right,
You know,
so
they're
it's
out there looking. They're fishing in the pond.
Right.
And
So at that point, I said, you know what? I don't need to see anybody anymore. I don't need to date anybody. I'd rather be alone than be the queen of first dates.
and have to, like, you know, come into your house after one of those, you know, fending or whatever it is that
Yeah.
people have to do, or like, you know, slow it down, cowpoke.
Yep,
That kind of
yep. There was one actually that picked me up at my house, and my older son happened to be home, and he told me afterwards. He said, "Why did you even date him?"
Oh,
And I said, "Because I tried. I tried.
I gotta
I gave him
try.
a shot.
Gotta try.
Gotta try."
What about the whole issue of intimacy? The fears and all that. When you're finally, you see somebody that's maybe this is a reasonable guy. What goes on in your head?
Um,
Like you've
you
been
want
through.
to you want to give it a shot, but you're very nervous, and you're afraid to be too close because you don't want to give that person that much of you, but at the same time, it's important, and
Feel inhibited. I mean, this is a strange, person. I mean,
it's a complete. Well, you have to assume that there was a good relationship there in the first place with the ex, but at the same time, you want to be close to somebody, you want to give them a shot, and then when you find out something about them that you don't like, you want to
stop sign,
right,
red light,
right,
stop.
exactly, right, right.
Don't proceed.
Yes, so
right. Proceed the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
So one last thing,
Sure.
Meeting a great person, what's it like to, finally after all that, you meet a great person and you're thriving again,
Yep.
mind is thriving, body's thriving.
Yes.
What's that like? Just to close this
I feel like
off.
I'm a kid again. I feel like I'm a teenager, and we're on the phone for an hour to 2 hours every night talking, and it never gets old. And
He listens to what you have to say. He's interested in what you have to
Very
say
much.
and how that feels.
Yes.
To a person
Yes.
who's been
He makes
through
me
that
feel
kind of
special.
mill.
He makes me feel important, and that it's really a very refreshing relationship. It's
Did a thing go off in your head that says, he makes me feel special? I mean, is that like it's like a comfort zone or something
Yes.
that he all of a sudden you enter into with somebody?
cautious still.
Clearly.
Very cautious, because I mean he went through something similar, and it was a shocker for him. And I've known him for a long time, and his significant other decided she was done, and he turned to me, and I was there for him to help him through it, and then all of a sudden something changed.
So everything, it fell into place.
It did.
And I'm really happy to hear that. That's so good.
And I finally said to him, I'm very thankful for her decision.
Very good. Listen, thanks
Yeah.
so much
Oh, well,
for
it's
sharing. I know that this is going to help a lot of people because they're feeling it and they're at different phases of what you've just talked about very quickly. And I can't thank you enough for coming out and sharing something that's very difficult. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. John Schinner coaches men to perform at their peak, from the boardroom to the bedroom. Dr. John hosts a podcast to help men evolve called The Evolved Caveman. He's a cool guy. He graduated from UC Berkeley with a PhD in educational psychology. He's been featured in national media such as U.S. News and World Report, Reader's Digest, Self Magazine. Dr. John has worked with Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, first responders, entrepreneurs, and executives from dozens of Fortune 500 companies. He wrote the award-winning book, How Can I Be Happy? Many relationships involve people who are just ready to call it quits. A lot of these people are wounded emotionally, physically, and guess what? They're headed for another relationship, probably, and maybe 20. Who knows? According to, or maybe no relationship at all. But the success that they're going to have is going to be based upon whether they take a look at themselves after that divorce and see where they are, at the present time in terms of their who are their role models and communication and all that. And we all know the divorce rate is up, so there's plenty of walking wounded around. But today we're extremely fortunate to have Dr. John Schinner, who is a amazing guy. I had a great chat with him last week on his podcast. Over 10,000 people have taken his online anger management course. Thank you, John, for you might be saving the world, from scary people.
I like to think so.
Well, good, because you are. And visit John at guidetoself.com or theevolvedcaveman.com to learn more about John after we talk to him. But today we can talk to John about a lot of things because he's got tremendous expertise. But I want to talk about men, divorce, and the aftermath, the coming back, the coming around. John, you were divorced. You're among the millions of people who just, went a different way. Just from the whole issue, decision to divorce. What do you do with that? Like when you got to make a decision to divorce and people procrastinate for years and years, and how do you get, finally to the, to the resulting answer? How do you get there?
Boy, I mean, it's a great question. There's a lot to it because one of the big barriers that people have is financial in this day and age. Like I know a lot of people that financially can't afford to create another household. So they're still living under the same roof, but in separate bedrooms.
Right, there's the economic reason for
and so I think the other one that's big is emotional reasons of self-definition. So, I think we really struggle with that idea of being a good father, a good husband, a good provider, a good spouse. And I mean, I know when I went through my separation, like I suffered a tremendous depression. And some of the thoughts that were going through my head were, I'm a failure as a husband, I'm a failure as a father, and I'm a failure as a man. And I think those are really, really common beliefs when you're going through this on both sides.
Sounds like the trifecta to me. Sounds like the trifecta. That's a heavy duty.
Because so much of our definition is wrapped up in that idea of being a father and a husband and a provider. I mean, it cuts to the core of our masculinity.
So people come in and they see you and they talk to you and you find them, in all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
That some of them hibernate, some of them go on a sex crazy rampage, hit the bars, and do that. Others, find plenty of negative ways, to cope with divorce. What's your suggestion? After a divorce, what should a guy do?
Well, I think first of all, just to give yourself the room to feel what you're feeling, to be aware of how it's going to make you feel, that you are going to feel like a failure at some level. Depression is probably likely. Anger is probably likely. You're going through a grieving process, which means you're grieving the loss of your relationship. And that means you're going to be alternating between waves of anger and sadness, typically. All that's appropriate and normal. And then given that that's the case, how do you best take care of yourself in that period of time? First, know that it's time limited. So it's going to pass eventually. And it could take up to 6 months.
And it sucks. And it sucks. And it can suck.
Yeah, it just sucks. It's freaking painful. So know that you're going to go through that, and that's normal. It's okay. You will get through it. But then, you want to default to like self-care basics. So making sure you get some exercise, and it doesn't have to be crazy exercise. It could be as simple as going 20-minute walk 3, 4, 5 times a week. You want to watch your alcohol intake. You want to be sure that you get your sleep. You want to be sure that you're eating 3 meals a day. It's as simple as reminding yourself to breathe deeply into your belly several times a day. And, if you get into, some go to mediation and they end pretty amicably, that's great. Right. And so mediation doesn't go well, create a process. It creates all sorts of emotions where you're getting, every email that you get from your lawyer, her, all these create triggers. Like as soon as you see the email or the text, immediately your heart rate jumps, you start to get anxious or panicked. And those are just lousy feelings. So you got to
Sends you down the
understand
road
that you're
you don't
in
wanna
this, but
go.
yeah. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you've got to find the best ways to manage your stress and manage your emotions so that you can get through this in the best way possible.
And you're at a weak point and you're alone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say you don't have great friends, but friends can't always be with you, but you're at a weak point and you're alone. And boy, that leads to the choices that we make. What do we do? You know, I feel awful. I'm horrible. What do people do when they feel awful? Well, I guess, you know, the positive ones, maybe they go see a movie by themselves. The other ones, you know, they drink themselves into a stupor, you know, or they go out and, you know, be a life of a party when they're really very unhappy. What about the whole issue of, you know, dating and sex, you know, and stuff? It's taken on a new form with online dating. You know, I mean, I have guys that talk to me that are just so sad. They're very sad, and they meet people that make them sadder. You know, you know, and they're like, Zev, I had this terrible, you know, Zev, I had this terrible. I want to hear about a wonderful one, man. You know, where's, you know, how, it's very, very frustrating for
Well, and it ranges widely. I think that, you know, some people I know have been in a marriage where the marriage has been dead for several years and they've had a chance to mostly mourn the end of the marriage while still in the marriage. So they get out, they separate, and they're ready to date almost immediately. And then there's other people where it doesn't matter. They get pretty depressed after separation and they're not ready to date. And then, you know, give it some time, give it 6 months, 12 months.
Visit to guidetoself.com or the Evolved Caveman to learn more about Dr. John Schinner. Make sure to check out all my social media and Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, the whole works. And we'll leave you tonight with a few loving ways to warm up and stimulate your relationship. Spontaneously hug and gently run your fingers on his or her arms, hands, and back. The pleasurable benefits of this easy-to-do gesture are enormously appreciated and send an emotional and physical message of caring and loving. Say, I like it when your partner does anything that makes you feel special and sexy. And guess what? You'll increase the chances of it occurring more often. Focus on improving the quality of your daily contacts before work, after work, weekends, special occasions, and your relationship will improve exponentially. Finally, try asking yourself what's right with your relationship instead of always focusing on what's wrong. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I'm Zev Halpern. See you next time for a new episode of Stimulate Your Relationship.